Hello and welcome to the top 5 paid search tips for 2020. With me is Ross Buckles, our Director of SEM, Greg Anastas, our Senior Vice President, Account Management, and I'm Dan Fogarty, Director of Content. At Bridge, our mission is simple. We solve marketers' most daunting challenge, which is finding their next customer. We've created custom profiles for the more than 250 million verified real people in our platform, and we have insights that nobody else has. From this pool, we create custom audiences for our partners, and because we know where they're most active, we can reach these people anywhere. Facebook, email, desktop, mobile, radio, connected TV, and for the purposes of today, paid search. We start with real people. We can tie back clearly and transparently to the campaigns that you run with us and can show you who actually bought a car from you, who visited your flower shop, or who subscribed to your magazine. As mentioned, paid search is a cornerstone to successful digital marketing, but change is afoot. And with that, I hand it over to Ross.
Thanks, Dan. 2019 has been a year of change in the search landscape. A lot of big changes coming down from Google and, quickly following suit, Bing, now Microsoft Advertising. So with that, we thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of ensure that the people that are doing paid search currently or thinking about doing paid search are on board with all of the current best practices in anticipation of further changes as we roll into 2020. So the first thing I wanted to start with talking about is what attribution model you're using within search. Google offers 6 different options for attributing conversions back to your campaign. The default being last click attribution. Last click attribution has been around for as long as I've been doing paid search, going back almost 13 years, and is still the default when you create a new Google account. So when you go to create a conversion goal and go in and enter all the information, Google will default to last click attribution. Attribution, I feel like, has been the buzzword for years in the industry, and you never really get a solid answer. There's a large gray area when it comes to attribution, but in terms of specifically looking at search campaigns, I think there is a pretty concrete answer in terms of how you should move forward with attribution. So despite last click historically being what Google uses and still being the default, it's an extremely antiquated attribution model. So just to summarize, last click attribution just means that whatever keyword is searched and ad is clicked on last before a user converts ultimately gets 100% of the credit for that conversion. And I'm going to kind of outline the issue I see with that. And I'm going to use an example to do so. So, take any industry. Let's use auto insurance as an example. When you're shopping for auto insurance, it's very likely that, you're familiar with a couple of the big brands, but you're going to do your price shopping and ultimately find out what plan fits your needs best, whether it's the cheapest or the most coverage, et cetera. The way you get to kind of price shopping and figuring out which is best for you is going to Google and searching for car insurance companies. Of course, ads will come up on Google. You'll very likely click through on all of them to discover what each of the company offers in terms of coverage and how much it's going to cost you for that coverage. And that could take anywhere from hours to days to weeks for you to finalize what company you're ready to move forward with. Once you do finalize that, you'll very likely go back to Google and search the company's brand name that you're going to move forward with in order to find their site quickly, get to it, and ultimately become a customer. So in that scenario, you're doing a search and clicking a few hours to days out from ultimately converting, and then you're doing a search when you're ready to convert. With last click attribution, 100% of the credit for you becoming that insurance company's customer would be attributed to you searching on that brand keyword that you ultimately then went through the process of converting on. The issue here is that no credit was given to your initial search for cheap car insurance that ultimately very likely made you aware that that company even existed and offered cheap car insurance. So as someone who's looking to optimize your campaign, if I'm only looking at last click attribution, I'm seeing brand keywords performing great, which historically they do anyway. and your non-branded campaign, in this instance, cheap insurance coverage, not doing anything at all, when in reality, that person very likely would have never converted on that brand term without having seen that keyword. So for that reason, I'd recommend a few of the other attribution models that Google offers as opposed to Last Click. Just to summarize real quick, First Click is pretty much the same as Last Click, but attributes 100% of the conversion to that first click. Again, it's not spreading the credit for the conversion across multiple clicks. So I would X that one out as well and move forward with one of the remaining four in the drop down that you see there. Google recommends data-driven attribution model. You can see here in this picture, there's a little yellow triangle with an exclamation point next to it. The reason for that is because this account hasn't reached the necessary thresholds in order to enable that. So it requires 15,000 plus clicks and 600 plus conversions within 30 days. Obviously, this model is built for big brands that get both a lot of traffic as well as a lot of conversions. Ultimately, what this model does is it learns what keywords are contributing to ultimate conversion as well as what ads are contributing to conversion. And based on this high volume of clicks and conversions, it attributes values for each of those touch points based on the volume of historic clicks and conversions. So it's a very futuristic model. It's something that's fairly new in terms of the rest of the attribution models, and it's something that Google's definitely pushing. I'd recommend trying it if you're getting the amount of traffic necessary to do so. However, I'd say the majority of clients that don't work for or with a big brand aren't going to have the data-driven model open to them. So with that, I'm ultimately going to get to my recommendation, which is position-based. The position-based model will assign partial credit to all of the clicks that happen prior to conversion, with a more heavily weighted credit given to the first click and the last click. So you can see in that little image, there's larger lines at the beginning and the end, and then a few small lines in between. Ultimately, what the percentages that are given is Google is giving 40% of the credit to the first click that a user does. 20% of the credit is spread between the first click and the last click. So if that's 1, that's a full 20%. If there's 5, that would be 4% for each of those clicks. And then ultimately the last click also gets 40% of credit for the conversion. So what you're doing is ultimately figuring out all of the keywords within the ultimate conversion path that led to that conversion and assigning them partial credit for that conversion. So in this scenario, again, when you're looking at that cheap car insurance keyword that drove that first click, as opposed to getting 0 credit for the conversion, it would get 40%. And ultimately, when you're going to optimize, you know that that keyword is leading to people purchasing your insurance, and you would optimize accordingly, as opposed to seeing no conversions for that same keyword and possibly pausing the keyword or bidding down on it. I'm going to switch gears now and talk about some best practices around geo-targeting. Geo-targeting is something I feel pretty passionately about. I highly recommend leveraging zip code targeting. I don't care if you're a national product, if you're a product that's available in an entire state. I think it's super important to get really granular with your targeting, and zip code is the most targeted that you can get within the Google interface. The reason for that is because ultimately there is a demographic that resonates most with your product, unless you're air or something that everyone ultimately needs equally. It's very likely that your product or your brand has a certain demographic that resonates more with that brand or product. So with that, I recommend zip codes, because from zip code to zip code, the demographic can differ so drastically. So in the image you see here on this slide, what I did was I put in the address of our office and a 10-mile radius around it, just to show the diverse areas that you're hitting as a result of anything besides zip code targeting. So again, this isn't even on a state or a national scale. This is just 10 miles around Fort Lee, New Jersey. And you'll see you're touching on areas like Yonkers, Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn, all of which are very diverse and have a very diverse demographic build, as well as parts of northern New Jersey, which is pretty much in the same boat. From zip code to zip code, you can see affluent or really low income demos. So with zip code targeting, it allows you to ensure that you're spending your dollars as efficiently as possible by only showing ads to users in zip codes that more closely match your target demographic. The other option here is to exclude certain zip codes that don't match your demographic. But again, I would do that at the zip code level. The other thing I want to talk about while we're on this slide is tiering your campaigns based on zip codes. So we all know that campaigns are where you're setting your daily budget. And to ensure that you're spending as much of your daily budget on these high quality zip codes, I would recommend breaking them out into what I'd call your tier 1 campaign with your cream of the crop zip codes. And then when you're looking to expand beyond what you consider your tier 1 zips, you can duplicate that campaign and make a tier 2 campaign, assigning maybe a lower daily budget to that campaign so that you still have some visibility in those zip codes, but you're not spending as much as you would in what you consider your tier 1 zips. Finally, before we move on, I'd recommend this isn't a set it and forget it type scenario. Just because those zips worked best for you upon initial launch or last year, that doesn't mean that it's going to be the same this year. So I would highly recommend continually evaluating and potentially redistributing the zip codes, of course, based on performance. Moving on to tip number 3, we just talked about the importance of leveraging zip codes to target your demographic. There are also demographic and audience targeting options within Google. So if you want to layer on additional targeting beyond just ensuring that you're targeting the correct zip codes, this slide here lists the options available to you in Google for demographic targeting. So for example, of course, if I want to target females 18 to 24, I could exclude all of those other age groups, exclude male as a gender, and that would ensure to me that when users do searches in the zip codes that I've told Google that they have to be 18 to 24 and female in order for me to show an ad. The one thing I do want to caution here is that there is that unknown category underneath each of the demographics. That, generally speaking, makes up about 50% of Google traffic. So those are users that Google doesn't have age, gender, household income, etc. data on. So to ensure specifically that you're hitting those females 18 to 24, you would also want to exclude that unknown category, with the caveat being that you're cutting your reach of traffic 50% by excluding the unknown. Now, the other thing on this slide that I want to touch on is audience targeting, specifically in market. So those are users that Google has determined based on their previous searches and their web activity are in the market for a particular product. You could layer these on as well. Because there are so many, 500 plus, it's too much to list here. But at the very least, I would highly recommend doing a Google search for Google in-market audiences. And I'm sure there's something out there that could get you a list of those 500 plus audience targeting options that you could layer on top of both the zip and the demographic targeting that we've talked about already. I want to move on to one of my favorite sections, number 4. It's been a staple of my almost 13-year career in paid search, and that's what's called the SCAG approach. So SCAG stands for Single Keyword Ad Group. Before I show you exactly what that means, I wanted to first show an illustration of a non-SCAG structured account. So MCAG here stands for multiple keywords in an ad group, and it is exactly what it says it is. It's an ad group that lives within your campaign that has more than one keyword in it. So in this particular example, you'll see the words SEM company, PPC company, pay-per-click company, and paid search company, all living within the same ad group. Makes sense. All of these keywords can be used interchangeably to talk about paid search and pretty much have the same meaning. But if you have multiple keywords in an ad group, then they're all eligible to be shown the same ads in that ad group. So in this particular scenario, if someone searches SEM company or PPC, pay-per-click, or paid search company, they'd all be shown a Bridge ad that says Bridge Digital Marketing, find your next customer, reach them anywhere. So, as an outside user, if I did one of these searches and was shown this ad, I wouldn't think there was anything wrong with it or anything odd about it. I'm doing a search for a digital marketing company and I'm being shown a digital marketing ad. So what I like to say is this isn't wrong. It's just not all the way right. The scenario that I do think is all the way right is leveraging single keyword ad groups. So in the next slide, what we're going to see is these same keywords broken out leveraging the SCAG approach. So in this scenario where a single keyword lives within a single ad group, so as opposed to one ad group up top, you now see 4 ad groups with each of those same keywords living within their own ad group. What it allows for is you to write custom ad copy to the keyword being searched, as opposed to being shown a digital marketing company ad when someone searches for an SEM company. This allows me to show a headline that says Bridge SEM Company, as well as a URL that alludes to SEM Company as well. And really you can get, depending on how much time you have and how targeted you want to be, you can be as creative as you'd like with writing custom ad copy down to the keyword level. So the key takeaway here is keyword quality score on Google is what's going to dictate your CPC for each of these keywords, along with competition. And the core components of a keyword's quality score are made up of relevancy of the keyword being searched to the ad copy being shown, as well as relevancy of the keyword being searched to the landing page, as well as click-through rate. By leveraging SCAG and writing this custom copy, you're going to see higher relevancy, you're going to see higher click-through rates, which ultimately means you're going to see higher quality scores, and in turn, you could potentially be paying a cheaper cost per click for a keyword than a competitor as a result of having a better quality score. And I think it is the most efficient way to get the most bang for your buck in terms of account structure. And with that, we're going to end the top 5 list with talking about Google Customer Match. Now, Google Customer Match is not new. It's been around for a few years. And ultimately, at the end of 2018, Google changed the requirements to be able to leverage Customer Match. You need to have spent over $50,000 over the life of the account. The account needs to have been live for over 90 days. And you still need to reach out to a Google rep once you hit those 2 required thresholds in order for them to turn it on. They've definitely created more of a barrier of entry into using Customer Match. But I want to talk about it because it's super important when you're looking to leverage first-party data. Customer Match allows you to upload that list to Google and target people specifically on that list on Google Search, on YouTube, and on Gmail. So I'm going to touch on each of them really quickly. First, search. Now, my recommendation would not be to, unless you have a huge list, to target only those people on the list in the Google search channel, because that means that person not only needs to be a part of the list, but they need to be doing a search for a keyword within your account. So we're really shrinking the size of your potential audience as a result of doing that. I think more often than not, what I leverage the list for in Google search is to bid adjust for those users that come from the list as opposed to those that don't. So what you can do, for example, is upload that audience list via Customer Match and say, when someone on this list does a search for a keyword within my account, increase my bid by 25%. I want to show in a higher position to people that are part of that list than those that aren't. But it still allows you that visibility to those that are not part of the list. You can also customize copy. For example, if the list is past purchasers and you want to write different copy, so maybe there's a renewal or a discount available to those that have already purchased, you can customize your copy to those members that are a part of the list in search, and then continue to show whatever your original copy is to those that aren't part of the list. That's pretty much how I leverage Customer Match on search. YouTube and Gmail, I think this is a bit of a better opportunity for when you're looking to scale and have some presence on what have traditionally been high impression channels. So you can spend a lot on YouTube and Gmail. Generally, they've been used for driving awareness. And I think Google has made a lot of changes recently that do make them more conversion focused. That being said, you can still quickly use up your budget on these channels just because of the sheer amount of volume available. This is an area where I would prefer to upload a first party data list and know that I'm targeting only those people, really just making it a more efficient use of those channels as opposed to blanketing YouTube and Gmail users with your ad. Finally, I do want to mention that the other useful thing that you can do with Customer Match is excluding that audience. If the list you're uploading is past purchasers and it's a product that someone only purchases every 10 or 15 years, you'd very likely not want to be showing an ad to those people over the course of those next 10 to 15 years. What you could do is upload that past purchaser list via Google Customer Match and tell Google to exclude that audience from seeing your ad when they're doing a search on Google or when they're exploring YouTube or Gmail. So super valuable in ensuring that you're hitting the right audience on top of the things that we already mentioned in terms of zip codes and demographic targeting. That is it for my top 5. So with that, I'm going to throw it back to Dan.
Cool. So we're going to look at some questions now from the audience. First question is, what changes specifically lead you to believe that Google is moving more and more towards a model targeting people as opposed to the traditional way users were targeted on the platform, which is keywords?
2019, it's really been a year of significant changes. For all of my almost 13-year career in paid search, I can't remember a year where Google announced so many big changes to the platform. So there's a few things. RSAs, responsive search ads, those aren't new in 2019, but what I will say is Google and their reps have been pushing agencies and clients to launch responsive search ads pretty heavily. For those that don't know what responsive search ads are, as opposed to writing copy that will show specifically as you write it, what you write for Google is up to 15 headlines and 4 descriptions. You upload that, and based on the user and their query, Google in real time will decide which 3 headlines and 2 descriptions to show of those that you uploaded. So they're showing a responsive ad based on users, again, their query and their search history. So the pushing of that is really kind of part of Google's push towards automation, as well as smart bidding strategies. So that's another thing, smart bidding strategies. So for example, like target CPA, where you tell Google what your target CPA is for a campaign and kind of let them decide based on the CPA and the users doing the searches, what keywords you should and shouldn't show on, and what position you should show in. So it's more of a hands-off approach there as opposed to the traditional manual CPC. Is another automated process that Google's pushing pretty heavily, that along with their continuous updates to those smart bidding strategies. So within the past few months, actually, they've launched maximize conversion value as opposed to just maximize conversions, and seasonality adjustments as well, where you can tell Google, based on what you've historically seen in terms of seasonality, to expect a spike in conversions, and Google will actually adjust their smart bidding strategies to account for that. So again, these are big changes. They're all pushing more towards less hands-on for the strategy person on your side running the search account, and more allowing Google to do what they want to do to get you to your main goal.
Next question is around the Google Ads interface. Where can I find a full list of the 100+ affinity audiences and 500+ in-market audiences that are available in the Google Ads interface?
Sure. So this goes back to number 2, when I was talking about the demographic and audience targeting options. I'm sorry, number 3, that it would be just too much to list on a slide. It's a bit clunky to kind of find all of them in the Google interface. However, if you went to the Audiences tab and selected the little pencil to add one, and then selected a campaign or an ad group where you wanted to add it, and clicked Browse, you can one by one go through and find all of those 100 plus affinity and 500 plus in-market audiences. However, what I'm going to do is go ahead and put together a nice list that either in Excel or Sheets that nicely lists out all of those audiences so that it can be shared with those that are interested in seeing it after the webinar.
Sounds good. Next question. I understand that I should only be using zip code targeting, but how do I scale beyond just the list of zip codes I started with based on historic conversion data?
Yeah, great question. So everything's performing great. You want more. What's next? Again, because those zip codes that have worked for you historically are what you decided to move forward with, knowing that history is the best indicator of future success, but you've kind of hit that point where you can't scale any further. You're not hitting any daily budgets and you want more. What I'd recommend doing is reaching out to Bridge. And this is not to be too salesy, but ultimately Bridge is a data company and has lots of data available to peruse. So if you've leveraged Bridge or if you know what your target demographic is, what we can then do is take that information and run it through the Bridge database and identify more zip codes outside of your current pool that index highest for your target demographic, and supply you with those so that at the very least, though you haven't gotten many conversions from those zip codes or any conversions in the past, you'll know that they index really high for the demographic of the zip codes that you have gotten conversions for in the past. So it's a nice targeted approach to expansion beyond just saying, we have these zip codes that works. Now let's expand to entire states or nationally. So that would be my recommendation there.
Awesome. Final question is around pricing.
The best question. How do you get started? So being that I'm the search guy, I'm actually going to take a step back and defer to Greg to talk.
Thank you, Ross. My sole contribution to this entire conversation on pricing. So thanks everybody for joining. It looks like this question's popped up a few times. And of course, if you like what you're hearing so far, and we hope that you do, please reach out to your account manager who will be more than happy to share with you our pricing schematic. On this, obviously, paid search is a really compelling offering and one that everybody's using to one degree or another. So we strongly recommend that we're talking to you guys, that your end clients, that everybody's embracing the concept as much as possible, and that we are looking at how we can best service all the various needs. And so we have compelling pricing for every budget type, for the small player as well as the large enterprise player. So we're very interested in talking to all different kinds of clients on that side of the fence. Ross has given us a lot of really good information to talk through with our clients, with you guys. I want to make sure that everybody's aware of everything we just captured. So just recapping a couple things. So Bridge, obviously, if you're talking to Bridge, you know that we are the people-based marketing company. We can deliver real people insights. With that real people data, we can provide really hyper-local zip code targeting, which, as Ross mentioned, extremely important to do these kind of paid search campaigns. And that the kinds of strategies that we can bring forth with these campaigns, the unique keyword strategy, only Bridge can break out keywords to drive performance and lower costs, which is obviously what we're trying to help everybody here is provide a compelling and cost-effective vehicle. Better analytics and reporting on that. We are providing our data all through Google Studio, which is providing really interesting data visualization and real-time visibility into your results. And then, of course, we can extend your campaign seamlessly, whether or not you want it through YouTube, through Gmail, and more. Ross, I don't know if you mentioned throughout your presentation, YouTube is the second biggest search provider in the LUMAscape. So YouTube, we would strongly recommend looking at YouTube as well. And with that, Dan, I'll pitch it back to you.
Thank you, guys, and thank you everybody for joining us. Before you leave, we're going to close with a 90-second video highlighting how we deliver your message to real people and get real results. Thanks again for joining us.
If you're a marketer, there's a question that keeps you up at night. How do I make sure I'm talking to real people? See, digital marketing was supposed to change things. It was supposed to give marketers complete control over how they engage with target audiences. But a funny thing happened on the way to Digitopia. Bots started popping up. So did ClickFarms. Pretty soon, Marketers had no idea if their messages were hitting the right people. They didn't even know if their messages were being shown to their target customer on Main Street or a bot from the dark edges of the internet. This isn't good. Marketers need a way to trust and verify that their messages are hitting the real people they're targeting, not some faceless cookie or a bot somewhere. Enter Bridge. We know people. Our people are real, with real names and addresses, meaning your messages are hitting real, verified people every single time. That's the definition of people-based marketing. Bot-based marketing? Bad. People-based marketing? Good. A data partner is only as good as their audience data, and ours is the best. The data on our audience is ethically sourced with permission for marketing, meaning we ask permission, and it meets the highest privacy and security standards. It's also updated 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So the next time you're up at night worrying if your message is hitting the real people you want it to, don't sweat. Bridge's people-based marketing will make sure that it does. Real people will see your ad. You'll get real results. And then, hopefully, you can get a good night's sleep. If you're ready to reach the real people you're targeting and see immediate results, connect with Bridge today.